either way, if we sin, we begin to walk in forgiveness and be washed clean, and then to live a life free of sin. He hears a lot of people say, well, we can't live free of sin. And he says, I don't believe that for him. I believe we can by the power and blood of Jesus live free of sin. We don't have to walk in sin any longer. Praise God.
Yeah, thank you, Carl.
Good truth to hear from our heart.
Good. Thanks for sharing that with us. Well, and Jack, thanks for bringing those cupcakes this morning. And man, those are really, really nice. Yeah.
Sugar free, weren't they?
Well, we today is the 23rd, March 23rd, and of course I have this tradition to read the breastplate the week of St. Patrick's. We missed last week, but gee, why not read it this morning? So a few days, and we've had our corned beef and cabbage, but amazing work here. It's dated the year 380. St. Patrick lived from 385 to 461. That sound right? That's what I have here. But why don't we just allow me to read this in a meditative kind of way and absorb this wonderful, wonderful prayer, I guess that's what it is. From ancient past. I arise today through a mighty strength. The invocation of the Trinity through the belief in the threeness and confession of the oneness of the Creator of creation. I arise today through the strength of Christ's birth with his baptism, through the strength of his crucifixion with his burial, through the strength of his resurrection with his ascension, and through the strength of his descent for the judgment of doom. I arise today through the strength of the love of cherubim, in obedience of angels, in the service of archangels, in hope of resurrection to meet with reward, in the prayers of the patriarchs, in the predictions of the prophets, in the preaching of the apostles, in the faith of confessors, in innocence of holy virgins, in deeds of righteous men. I arise today through the strength of heaven, light of sun, radiance of moon, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, swiftness of wind, depth of sea, stability of earth, and firmness of rock. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me, God's might to uphold me, God's wisdom to guide me, God's eye to look before me, God's ear to hear me, God's word to speak for me, God's hand to guard me, God's way to lie before me, God's shield to protect me, God's host to save me from snares of devils, from temptations of vices, from everyone who shall wish me ill, afar and near, alone and in multitude. I summon today all these powers between me and those evils, against every cruel, merciless power that may oppose my body and soul, against incantations of false prophets, against black laws of pagandom, against false laws of heretics, against craft of idolatry, against spells of witches and smiths and wizards, against every knowledge that corrupts man's body and soul. Christ to shield me today against poison, against burning, against drowning, against wounding, so there may come to me abundance of reward. Christ with me. Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit down, Christ when I arise, Christ in the heart of every man who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in every ear that hears me, Christ in every eye that sees me. I arise today through a mighty strength. The invocation of the Trinity, through belief in the threeness, and confession of the oneness of the Creator of creation. Amen. Isn't that amazing? Whew. Amazing.
There was some pretty awful things happening in his day. You know, we don't have to fight against getting burned at the stake too often. It was just some pretty awful, horrendous things going on.
Different day, but a lot of correlation as well. Boy, you know, we can resonate with that. Well, let's turn to Genesis. We're in Genesis chapter 34. We got a relatively large reading this morning. We're not going to quite finish through this story, but we're going to read it to a nice stop. Well, it's not a nice stopping point. But it is a stopping point to just, hopefully we can catch our breath a little bit and analyze what is happening here, and then we'll move on next week. Couple more weeks in this section. So when somebody gets to 34, beginning at verse 13, let's read verses 13 through 39. 13, through 29, not 39.
The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are by every male among you being circumcised."
Then we will give you our daughters, and take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go. Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and to his son Shechem. The young man, who was the most honored of all of his father's family, lost no time in doing what they said, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to the men of their city.
These men are friendly with us, therefore let them live in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters in marriage and give our daughters to them. Only on this condition will the men consent to live with us, to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will live with us. All who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city.
3 days later, while all of the men were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Cain's brother, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword, took Dinah from Shechem's house, and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled.
They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city and out in the field. They carried off all their wealth, all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses.
Wow. Unbelievable. So, let's work through this slowly. Hey, Bob. And
We'll catch you.
the context, we know that Dinah was defiled by the young man Shechem. We've looked at that. We've explored the key phrase here in 13 through 17. You need to become like us. Now, what's driving this? We remember last week we looked at the idea of pausing the scene as the deal was proposed on the table. I'm of the opinion that Shechem and Hamor, father son, came to the best of their ability to make this right. Even though we understand, a infraction like this, a rape, is you can't make a rape right, but they were asking for the hand of this young woman in marriage. And so it's my position, I'm taking that position, that they were honestly, in sincerity, coming to the family in an attempt to make this right. The brothers are outraged, and we can understand that. We've talked about that. And so the opening verse, in verse 13, as we now start the tape again and action happens, we see the response. The brothers are responding, the text is clear, in deceit. There is no sincerity here whatsoever. It's everything that follows that they're saying is deceit, as defined by the text. And so in deceit, and because the reason, of course, is because Dinah was violated, they said, we can't do this because of our, in my term, religious framework of thinking. They use a religious excuse that you are not like us. You need to become like us, which is through this process of circumcision. Then, if you become like us, we will become part of you. You will become part of us. We will live as one. And I'm paraphrasing this, obviously. We will be as one people. Pause. And if you don't, we will take our daughter and go home. Isn't that amazing? Have you heard this before?
You don't play by my rules.
Yeah.
Take my ball and
Yeah,
go home.
I'll take my ball and go home. That's exactly what is happening here. Okay. Now, verse 18. That's the context. That's what we talked about last week. This whole point of decision and what in my mind they're going through as they're trying to make this decision, and they choose the road to protection. They are protecting not only that, but they're outraged, they're enraged. And so the key phrase here is you need to become like this, we're going to take our ball and go home. Okay, key phrase to the next slide, and here it is. You need to become like us, or we will take our daughter and go. What is being communicated here, in your opinion? What are the thoughts in your head as you're thinking about it? What is being communicated to these people? What's that? My way or the highway. That is well said. My way or the highway. And how many of us in here are not guilty, or either guilty or not guilty? I mean, how many times have I used my way or the highway? In a nice Christian kind of way. We're all guilty of this. This is why there are thousands and thousands of Protestant denominations. Because it's my way or the highway. Well, I choose to take this exit and I'll just go start my own deal. That's how we think. This thinking is so much a part of our culture. We recently, it's been a couple months now, the whole State of the Union. It's not that the address is ridiculous by any means. It never is. There's a lot of thought and energy put in it. But the response, they always show the response of the crowd. Half of them stand and half of them don't. It's this whole posturing. And, my way or the highway. How are we ever going to get along? So, I don't know what made... I just thought of that because I was just in Washington, D.C. Yes?
They pretty much knew they have,
They what?
They had them, they were gonna take the bait, the trap was being set, and they knew these men wouldn't back off, so they go along with the agreement. But just in case they had any second thoughts, we'll take our daughter and leave.
Yeah.
Take our ball and
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah, I think we've all got it cast in our minds pretty clearly. And it's just so strangely familiar, this story. And here's my next thing. You know, my attempt to explain this very strange but somewhat familiar story. We're all a phrase with my way or the highway. We've either been on the receiving end or we've been on the giving end, or I will take my ball and go home. This is a familiar scenario to all of us in this room. Okay, then in continuing on. Now their words seemed reasonable. How in the world could it be reasonable to hear the words, you know, no deal unless you circumcise yourself? That's pretty, is that reasonable? That would never be Have you ever gone to a business table and had something as ridiculous as this? This is, in my mind, this isn't reasonable. But they said it was reasonable. They thought it was reasonable. And so the young man did not delay. In my mind, this is one of the bases why I think they are coming in sincerity. Shechem led the way. And he went out. How he did it, I have no idea. Can you imagine circumcising yourself?
Well, you mean your team, your army. Hey guys, excuse me, we made a deal here. Step forward.
Shechem is leading the way.
Yeah, but all his buddies said, we made a deal here. You didn't consent to this, but it was part of our deal. I'm the leader.
Yeah. Well, they have yet.
Yeah.
He went through the act himself, leading the way, and now comes the largest, biggest sales job in history.
Yeah.
In those days, the elders meet at the gate. The framework of reference is the elders, the superiors, the older men of the community lead the community. And there are many, well, I don't know how many, but in cultures today, this is still, they don't have a gate of the city, but it's the elders of the community that reach consensus and derive law for what is going to happen in that community. So
City
now,
council.
what's that?
It's called the city council.
City council. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. So they're sitting at the gate, and Hamor and his son Shechem come, and they've got to put this positive spin on this thing. They've got to spin this deal to close the deal, because Shechem wants this young woman, and this is the only way this is going to happen. They start out with the phrase, "These men are friendly with us." I look at that as positive spin. Just start it on a good note. It gets worse. "Therefore, let them live in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough." Again, casket, we have room for these people, and they can live with us. We will, we can benefit from them. We can benefit. We can bring benefit to them. But here's the deal. There's a lot of pros to this deal, but here is the punch. They went through this really quickly. Only on this one condition will they consent to live with us, that every male becomes circumcised. Then one guy raises goes, "What's that?" He said, "Well, let me tell you." What? What are you talking about? And then Shechem stands up and says, "Here, you know, it's not so bad."
I don't know if he stood up.
This is just unbelievable. Okay, And then verse 23 is interesting. He says, will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? Now there is the benefit, and the only thing I can come up with here is that from their perspective, the occupants of the land, they can become stronger as a people with more people dwelling. Larger tax base. That's how they are thinking. One, they're assuming, the elders of the community are assuming the authority of their geographic region. Therein lies the problem, because we have this other entity coming in, Jacob, that they've heard the voice of God and God's given it to him. We're going to have a conflict here. Two people won't have ownership of the same land. That same conflict is happening today. So the elders of the land are assuming their role, and their assumed role that, well, we live here, we're obviously in authority of the land, we can become stronger as a people if we assimilate these folks in. And I guess the best correlation I can make is we got more of a tax base, because we all own, we can all benefit from it. Let me continue, Carl, because I want to wrap this up here. Then what happens is, through this marvelous sales job, they're able to convince the other elders, and they all went out of the gate. They listened, meaning they accepted, and they did it. I mean, they all went through the Shechem training process, and they did it. It's amazing. I don't think it was reasonable at all, but they did it. They listened. Now on the third day it came about, strategically planning, Simeon and Levi, sons 2 and 3. Reuben is not involved. I would assume Reuben would have been the natural leader of the brothers, because he's the oldest. Reuben is, interestingly, not engaged. But for some reason, unbeknownst, Simeon and Levi take the bull take the sword, and notice it's not all the brothers. I mean, I think that's something we have to reckon with. I don't think there was consensus. Why would the brothers just send 2 people out to do such a dastardly deed? If all of the brothers brought ownership if all the brothers concurred. I think it was not even a split decision. These guys were acting on their own. And although the other brothers were, I don't know. It's just conjecture. Dinah's brother, they took the sword and they went through, guys, and listen to this, they killed every male. They killed every male in this community. The people of God. Okay, they killed Hamor and his son Shechem by the edge of the sword, and then they took Dinah from Shechem's house. That's an interesting detail, because Dinah was obviously already with Shechem. Was it by her own accord? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that, but it's interesting that she is with him. Jacob's son came upon the slain. They not only killed the people, but the word looting. They looted the people, the dead people. They looted, and they took their flocks and their herds. And again, their rationale was, this guy raped our daughter. So they took the entire community. They looted. They took away their herds and their wealth and their little ones and their wives. They took away their little ones, their children, their wives, and all of their houses. Oh my goodness, we got to stop there. I can't take any more of that.
They got their wives. They got the women.
They got the women. Yeah, there you go. Yes.
They were just cashing the check.
Cash at the blank check. Yeah.
It was a bigger blank check than they expected.
Yeah.
Good point.
Carl, we gotta wrap. I just want us to ponder this. Next week, I'm going to start a couple of weeks, and I'm going to try to explain from my perspective why I think this happened, and why I think it continues to happen today. Similar, not exactly, but why. We'll look at the why next week and the following. So I think you'll find it really interesting. Have a good snowy day. Drive careful.
Oh, yeah. Have a good week.
Simeon and Levi were Dinah's blood siblings.